Pawn to e4. Pawn to e5. Knight to f3. Knight to c6. Bishop to b5. Ruy Lopez. Pawn to a6. Bishop to a4. Knight to f6. Morphy defense. King to g1. Knight to e4. White can get the pawn back by countering on the e-file. Pawn to d4. Attacking e5 to make the opening of the e-file more dangerous. Pawn to b5. Bishop to b3. Pawn to d5. Grabbing space in the center and supporting the e4 knight. Pawn to e5. Getting the pawn back and opening the d-file. Bishop to e6. Defending d5 and blocking e5. Knight to d2. The Bernstein variation. Knight to c5. Attacking b3 and defending e6. Pawn to c3. Increasing the control of d4. Pawn to d4. Bishop to c2. The first surprise. The main line is 2 swap bishops. White is provoking black to continue the bishop hunt with d3. Pawn to d3. Bishop to b1. Black has completely equalized. All white pieces are on the first 3 ranks. The d3 pawn is overextended and is both an asset and a liability. Queen to d5. Hitting e5 and preparing long castle. Rook to e1. King to c8. Perhaps too rushed, it was more flexible to first develop the dark squared bishop and then decide if it's more appropriate to castle long or short. Knight to g5, a great move. A novelty. White gambits the e5 pawn to open a line for his rook. This is a new idea. There are no games from here in Lichess Masters database. Knight to e5. White to play. Pause the video and find the best move. I hope you found it. This opening idea is a generalization of the hypermodernism. White allowed black to create a center of pieces. Now it's time to destroy it by attacking from the flanks. Pawn to a4, a great move. Another pawn sacrifice. Hitting black's queenside pawns and opening a window on a2 for the bishop. It seems this is still home preparation. Can black grab the free pawn? Black to play. What to move? If knight to a4. Suddenly all white pieces are coordinating. Beautiful geometry. All white moves come with a tempo. Sacrificing b2 to block the dangerous passed d3 pawn. Knight to f6, a great move. The knight is untouchable because of the pin on e6. And white has compensation for the pawns. Bishop to d6 was played in the game, holding the e5 knight. Black thought for 10 minutes before making this move. White, on the other hand, has more time than when they started. Pawn to b5, opening the a-file. Pawn to b5. Bishop to a2. Black's center is under attack. It took white near 27 minutes to make this move. It seems white is now out of home preparation. Knight to c4. The knight protects his queen by blocking with his body the fire of the a2 dragon. Pawn to b4, hitting the defender of the d3 pawn. It took white another 20 minutes to make this move. Knight to d7. Bishop to c4. Pawn to c4. Rook to a5. Queen to c6. White to play. What to move? If knight to e6, a great move, damaging black's pawn structure. Triple attack. Taking the active bishop and getting a tempo to defend the weak c3 pawn. And white has the advantage. The material is equal again and white pieces are active. Knight to f3, a mistake, was played in the game. The horse wants the fresh pastures of the d4 square. Bishop to d5. This is why white's previous move was an inaccuracy. Now the d5 bishop is an active piece while the g5 knight is hitting the void. Nevertheless, the position is still complex and there are chances for both sides. Knight to d4. Queen to b7. Bishop to e3. The g2 pawn is tactically protected. Pawn to h6. Knight to f3. Knight to b6. Increasing the defense of the king's side. Knight to d2, a obvious move. It was more precise to prepare the invasion through their file with queen to a1. Can black grab the g2 pawn now? No, it is still tactically defended. Observe that black's king is in a dangerous open diagonal. If black takes on g2, white can answer with queen to g4. Pawn to h5, removing the g4 square from white's queen. Knight to b5. Bishop to c6, a dubious move, repelling the intruder. White has two choices. He can immediately grab the dark squared bishop, or he can give a check on a7 and grab the light squared bishop. Which bishop is the most appetizing? Knight to a7 taking on d6 allows black to develop the rook, so white chooses to take the c6 bishop and remove black's queen-bishop battery. Moreover, the c4 and d3 pawns are on light squares, so taking the light squared bishop can be more profitable in the long term. King to b8. Knight to c6. Queen to c6. Knight to f3. Now is the turn for the other knight to stand on the d4 outpost. Rook to e8. Knight to d4. Black's queen doesn't have too many squares. Queen to e4. The queen runs into the dangerous e-file. Pawn to b5, securing the c6 outpost for the knight. King to b7, getting out of the fork. Knight to c6. Black to play. What to move? If rook to d7, a mistake. It leaves the e8 rook unprotected. And white is winning. Queen to d5 was played in the game, getting out of the dangerous semi-open e-file. Knight to d8. Rook to d8. Queen to e1. Preparing the invasion through their file. King to b8. Queen to a2, increasing surveillance of the past d3 pawn and vacating the square for the rook. The drawback is that it leaves the e1 rook unprotected. Rook to e8. Queen to d2, blocking the dangerous passed pawn. The main defender of black's castle is the b6 knight who protects the a8 square. White plans to exchange his e3 bishop for the b6 knight, however he first has to neutralize black's action on the e-file. Rook to e4, moving the rook to a protected square. Rook to a1. Pawn to h4, a blunder. Black dreams of starting a kingside attack. However, it is very far from reality. White can force simplifications. Note that the c4 and d3 pawns are on light squares, so they can become targets in the endgame. Bishop to b6. Pawn to b6. Rook to e4. Queen to e4. White to play. What to move? If queen to e1, black is forced to swap queens because of the dangerous check on e8. The endgame is winning for white. The king can stop the passed d-pawn and the rook is free to attack black pawns. Rook to a4, white is winning. No one can defend the c4 pawn. Queen to a2, an obvious move, was played in the game. White continues with his idea of invading through the a-file. White missed the winning blow just one move before reaching the time control. King to c8, an obvious move. The black king flees in terror. Queen to a6. King to d7. Queen to b6. The queen can go back just in time to stop the passed d-pawn. Queen to e5. Threatening check on h2 followed by mate on h1. Queen to c6, intermediate check. King to e7. Pawn to g3. Pawn to d2. Queen to c4. The queen comes back just in time to protect the back rank. Queen to e1. Queen to f1. Queen to e5. Rook to d1. The d-pawn that was black's pride and sorrow will fall soon. Pawn to g3. Pawn to g3. Bishop to c5, pinning the f2 pawn, hoping for a miracle. If white's queen leaves the protection of d2, black can give perpetual checks. Rook to d2. Queen to g3. Queen to g2. And black resigns.